We're now at the point where it's time for the Houston Rockets off-season breakdown, though, because they are unfortunately eliminated from the playoff picture. So, the Houston Rockets here. I've kind of broken out their roster into different kind of tiers, right? They have the four big prospects that, Alperen Şengün, who is borderline all-star this year, was really good. Jalen Green, who really struggled for 4 months this year, and then 5 months really, came on in March in a way that made people really believe that he might have turned the corner. And I don't think that's a totally unfair assessment, as we talked about. I thought that there were some very real things that he did that make you want to believe that some of this moving forward is sustainable. Also, in the 4 games before today's game, he went 5 of 15 for 12 points, 10 of 22 for 26 points, 4 of 12 for 13 points, 6 of 18 for 21 points. That's 37% from the field, 21% from 3, 18 points per game, 3.5 turnovers versus 5.5 assists. That is a real marked decline from where he was prior when they were in that easier stretch of the schedule.
And today, 6 of 15 today, 2 of 7 from 3, 5 turnovers. He did have 8 assists. So we talked about it, right? When these shots are going, it's a lot of fun. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched today's game. I hope the defense has still been as good as what we gave him credit for, but the scoring efficiency has definitely come back to earth pretty substantially, pretty quickly.
And what I want to say, though, is that it's a real positive step in terms of growth for Jalen Green to be able to go a month and obliterate bad teams.
Sure.
That is a real positive step, and I think Rockets fans have every reason to be enthusiastic about it. Amen Thompson, I think, for a rookie, looked awesome during that stretch where they won games. 3 years, $31 million left on his deal. And then Jabari Smith has just been steady all year. He's been really useful. I know that Rockets fans probably aren't super happy with him today as we're recording this, but Jabari Smith has been really, really good throughout the year. He's one of the youngest players in the NBA still, even in his second year. He is a really, really good basketball player that is already a starting quality 4-man in the NBA. There's also Cam Whitmore and Tari Eason. I've put them just slightly into a lower tier. Whitmore, because we still don't really know what we have with him yet, right? Whitmore really might have a higher upside than all of these guys. You could make the case. Or, some of the feel stuff won't necessarily come around, and the defense in a team concept doesn't come around, even if he's a good on-ball defender. There's just a little bit more uncertainty with Whitmore. And then with Tari Eason, a guy that I think is going to be a long-term starter in the NBA, for sure. The upside just feels a little bit lower with Tari, in my opinion, in terms of the on-ball creation, the shot creation, the scoring, than it is with some of these other guys at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't think Rockets fans are going to be happy about Tari being listed 6th, even though I know it's not meant as any disrespect.
Is there? I love Tari Eason. I do. I think he's outstanding. To me, it's more a statement of how good these 5 other guys are.
Agreed.
Than Tari Eason being the 6th guy. It's Tari's awesome. I love him.
We took some major heat from people about our list whenever we did the young cores, and then not necessarily where the Rockets were at, but how we listed out kind of these 6 guys. And I felt like Tari was, the other one I was surprised by, there was some Rockets fans not as high on Amen, which was interesting to me that they did not seem to be as big of fans as him. And, I guess with the floor spacing, that makes sense. And so, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They have 6 really exciting young prospects. And I think we both believe that.
Yeah, 100%. If you want to put Tari higher than Jabari Smith, I disagree, but whatever. He has more athletic tools than Jabari Smith does, but Jabari is going to be an awesome shooter. And I think Tari's a better defender, but like they're different defenders. Tari's like a chaos, like disruptor, and Jabari's like pretty solid. Like he's not as good as, you know, I think I saw like some people like really, really like Tari this year on defense. I think he's like a solid, steady within scheme guy already, is like a 20-year-old. So like that's a huge win in my opinion. The thing for me though, and this is what we did talk about in our, big Rockets omnibus thing, I still don't think they have like the number one guy on a title team.
Agreed.
Which is the thing. I think you can make a case that, I don't know, like this is the difference for me with Tari. Like I love Tari Eason. I don't know if he has all-star upside. I think the other five, like if you squint, you can really see it with them. If Cam Whitmore like goes nuclear as a scorer and averages like 28 a game at some point, and I don't think I can rule that out, like that's all-star stuff. If Jabari Smith becomes like this awesome two-way guy who averages 20 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and like becomes better at like manning the back line on defense, like that's probably an all-star. Amen Thompson's athletic tools are just absurd, right? Like we've seen that. And then Jalen Green and Şengün, like, Jalen was certainly all-star quality for a month in March there, and Şengün was close to it, offensively for the full season and everything. Like it's real. Like they have a lot of dudes here that have really serious upside, and I love where the Rockets are headed from an overall core perspective. But the thing is that this offseason is actually like really important for them to get right, because they have a lot of difficult options that, if handled poorly, could really force things to take a bit of a step back, I think.
Well, no, that's where I'm at with them. As excited as I am about them and these 6 guys and what Fred VanVleet has brought to the organization, and even Dylan Brooks, to his credit. And, I know you have Jeff Green on here as well. I'm like, I always kind of enjoy watching Jeff Green do his thing as, a backup 5 for them. I kind of find myself just going, what's the path? What do they do? Do you quote unquote run it back and with internal growth? Do you make a big swing? Because I'm kind of with you. I don't know that the face of the franchise, number one option, however you want to say it, however people want to phrase that, I don't think that guy, I don't think for sure you have that guy. Could Alperen be that guy? Maybe. Could Jalen be that guy? Maybe. I think those are probably the 2 options. If they're both really good, can they play off of each other and play together? Do you eventually? But like I think for me, where I think I love the possibilities and the paths, but there's a lot of paths, Sam. And so it's like, when do they make the decisions? How do they make the decisions? Do you cut bait on somebody too early? Do you hold on to them for too long? How do you keep building out a momentum? It's all really fascinating to me. And I wonder if there isn't a push to like fast track it after they made a step this year. Hey, we got to go make another big swing and try to improve on finishing 11th. And man, the West is so good too, Sam. Like that's a major part of this as well.
So there are 2 different ways you could take that, right? In terms of the West being so good. Do you try to wait for like a couple of these teams to age out because you have Şengün and Jalen Green and Jabari and Amen and Cam and Tari, and these guys are probably still 3 or 4 years away from their ceiling at the end of the day? Or do you use them as assets and try and like push it forward again? The good news is that I think what they should do is probably run it back with a lot of this core. The reason and by run it back, I'm going to say something that like Rockets fans might get a little bit frustrated at. Like I run it back without like any significant decisions made. I don't extend Jalen Green. I don't extend Alperen Şengün. I like really am still trying to find out what exactly we've got here. If I'm Houston, like I want to know where everything sits before I have to make a significant decision on the future of the organization. Jalen Green just had a fantastic month of basketball where he looked like the Zach LaVine kind of all-star that everybody wanted. The 4 or 5 months prior to that were not very good, right? How do you assess that? Do you assess the jump and think that it's realistic, or do you think that maybe, we need more information? I would want more information personally.
Yep.
Can Alper and Şengün in him coexist in a real way? I think probably yes. But can Alper and Şengün and Amen Thompson coexist on the court together when neither of them are shooting threats? Maybe. But then if Jalen Green is like a 33 to 35% three-point shooter because the shot difficulty is serious for him, what do you do there? Like, how do you fit Tari into that, who's like a fairly he can shoot a little bit, but like he's not a guy that teams close out on all that heavily, right? So how do you make all these pieces work? I would probably try and run it back unless like something crazy came available, and we'll talk about that momentarily in terms of the options. I just want to point out Fred VanVleet had a fantastic season. I thought he was their best player, their most important guy throughout the year. I've said that multiple times on this show at this point. Rockets fans know where I stand on VanVleet. I thought that the defensive attention to detail that he brought, the communication that he brought, the decision-making, almost like single-handedly, like fixing their turnover problem, it felt like. All of it, I thought, was so important to where the Rockets ended up this year, 38 and 39 at the time of us recording this, maybe 38 and 40 after today's game. I thought VanVleet was incredible this year. Really, really incredible. Dylan Brooks, had a solid year. I thought he was better in the first half than the second half. And now we're sitting in a circumstance where they traded for Steven Adams in February or January, maybe late January even. Jock Lawndale actually played pretty well for them late in the year, and they have 3 non-guaranteed years on him for $8 million a season. Jeff Green, they have a team option. Jae'Sean Tate, they have a team option. And they have like a strange draft situation where their pick goes to Oklahoma City if it's outside of the top 4. In all likelihood, it will be outside of the top 4. But they have Brooklyn's first-round pick, which is currently projected at number 9, and that is unprotected. They're also going to have number 43. So all of that table is set now. I will ask this question first. If you are Alperen Şengün's agent, you go in and you ask for the max 100%, right?
Yep.
If you are the Houston Rockets, do you give Alperen Şengün the max?
I know this stuff is delicate. I know how good he's been. What's my alternatives if I say no?
The alternative is that you say, hey, we're going to play out the string, and you tell him very candidly up front, we love you, but please just understand the salary cap situation that we're in, where he has a $15 million salary cap hold for next offseason. If he gets a max, it's probably going to be in the ballpark of what, like, assuming the cap is in the like $150 million range. I think it's projected like 150, 155. 25% of 155 is $38.75 million. Just know that, like, hey, if we do this way, we get like potentially max cap space next offseason. So that could be a real way for us to add talent around these guys moving forward after Fred potentially expires and kind of ages out, because I don't know if they're going to want to keep Fred after 2 years, right? Yeah. I don't extend Şengün. Do you extend Jalen Green?
So I guess here's my question. How bad of a situation do you find yourself in if you extend both of them? If you give both of them the extension, I understand the cap situation aspect of it. If they end up not working together, are those contracts really hard to trade? Are they like that? That's what I would have to ask myself. Because like, I also don't want to piss off potentially 2 core members of how I build this thing out. And so I don't want to just like make them upset. And it's like, hey, But I guess that's the truth of the matter is I'm trying to decide some ways between the two of you. Can you work together? Can you not work together? And so it's interesting how they're going to play out with these two things this summer.
So here's the way I would do the Green thing. So Jalen Green, his cap hold is going to be like $31 million. If he's willing to take 20, man, I don't even know if I'd want to pay him yet. I think you'd probably like offend him with like any sort of like discount offer.
Yeah.
So like, I don't even know if I would do that, but that leads in to my next question. The Rockets they're in a very strange position right now where they have a crazy amount of pick capital coming from Brooklyn potentially, because Brooklyn looks like they're on a railroad track to nowhere and they get their picks for the next 4 years, which means if you don't feel confident in one of these guys, you can move them before you have to make a difficult decision on them and kick the can down the road, basically. This is why this one's really hard. And this is why we're going to spend a lot of time on the Houston Rockets, because there are so many weird, flexible kind of pivot points that they could make this offseason that will have ramifications down the road. I mean, do you look to trade one of these two? Second, let's assume that they're not off the table momentarily. This is all thought exercise. This is not me, leaning one way or another until I'll give my answer. Is there a price point that you would feel comfortable accepting from somebody else in a deal for Jaylen Brown or Alperen Sengun, or Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun?
So I think where I'm at with this is I am not actively shopping any of these guys right now. I think there's a world where you grow it out with them. I'm not sure what percentage that is or how much I believe in it, but I would like to see it and I'd like to figure it out. And can Jalen continue to build off what he did and Sengun off this season and all of that? With that said, I am definitely keeping the pulse on every big name that comes available. Because at the end of the day, if I can go get somebody that I think is a true number one option, and, depending on who that is, maybe depends on who I put on the table, right? If it's a big man, I don't know who that is. If Embiid becomes available, then I'm probably putting Sengun in the deal and deciding if Jalen Green fits or not. If Donovan Mitchell becomes available, and I think he's and I'm just throwing out names, guys. I know people are like, I'm not saying, but then maybe I don't feel like I need to keep Jalen Green. You know what I mean? So like, I'm not actively shopping these guys, but I am actively keeping the phone lines open to go hunt that guy, because I think the worst thing I could put myself in is none of these guys build out to be the number one guy. And I don't take advantage of a chance to get him. So like for the record, I wouldn't go trade these guys for Mikal Bridges. Like I wouldn't do that. I don't think that moves the needle for me because I don't think Mikal Bridges is the number one option. So like you're just going to go into next year with less assets, less young guys that can grow. And like I love Fred VanVleet and Mikal Bridges, but that's not moving the needle for me. So like I'm talking above whatever Mikal Bridges is for sure.
So to me, I would want as many lottery tickets at a number one option as I could have. Let's say that there's like a 1% chance Jalen Green can be one, 1% or like a 5% chance Alperen Sengun can be one, a 1% chance Thompson can be one, probably like a 0.25% chance Jabari Smith can be one, 0.5 Cam Whitmore, and 0.05 for Tari Eason, right? Like I don't know. I'm just like spitballing, right? I would want as many shots at that as possible. And I probably wouldn't move Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges. The only counter to that I can see in my head would be, do you think trading Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges, having Bridges and Fred VanVleet, makes you a more interesting potential landing spot for next summer for like another all-star player when you have all of the millions of the picks and you have all of these prospects that you can put in a deal. Houston like very much can offer more than most teams in the league in a deal for a star, right? Because they have all these dudes. Like if it just cost Jalen Green, yeah, I would probably do that. I don't know if I would do that. Like I would really, it would be a consideration for me in a way, in a real way, in the assumption that if I felt like I could get a star next summer, I might be in a better position to do that with a set in stone 3, whatever Fred VanVleet can be is a 2. You have the flexibility to be able to remove VanVleet from the roster and play in free agency at that point, or you have the flexibility to be able to keep VanVleet and trade for a star at that point. I actually think that like a Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges deal has some interesting aspects to it. But I do not move Green for like anything below that. And I don't think there's a world the Nets would do that, frankly, just given the way that they seem to be attached to Mikal Bridges. So it's almost like a moot point. And if I am the Rockets, I'm probably not moving Jalen Green for more than like a star player, or for anything less than a star player, or like an elite level role player under a great deal like Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, and I think, again, we talked about this, I think, the last time we went down this rabbit hole, and it may have been the Rockets. I think it was somebody else, but it's like, okay, that's fine. Tell me the move that's coming then. Because if I make that move and Jalen Green goes and becomes a star in Brooklyn, I can live with that if getting Mikal Bridges then lands me whoever that player is in free agency or whatever. Like I can still live with that. But if I trade Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges and whatever else that trade would take, and I bring in Bridges, and then I'm just trying to play Bridges as a number 1 option, and I have to re-up Fred VanVleet, and now he's 33 years old on a contract being my number, like that doesn't move the needle for me. So that's all I'm saying is like, I could live with that. But if I'm whoever, I want to see the plan that builds it out the rest of the way. Who are the targets that we could get in free agency? Obviously, we have the assets that, like you said, to be the major player for anybody that comes available via trade, and then again, what do we think Şengün, Amin, how are those guys going to build out around this as well? So I could see it, but that's why I'm a little more hesitant. I would be open to moving a couple of these guys and the picks and whatever, if it's a bona fide number 1 superstar type of player that becomes available. Outside of that, for this offseason, I'm not super interested, Sam. Now, 10 months from now, I may have a completely different tune, because 10 months from now, we may know exactly what Alperen Şengün is or is not, and what Jalen Green is or is not, how they work together with Amin and those things. And then now you may have a different perspective. But right now, that's my perspective on wanting to. I have this fear of giving up on things too soon. And I don't think there's a reason to rush it. Like some of these teams are eventually going to fall in the West. And I don't know, it may happen slowly. Minnesota's in cap hell with an ownership that we have no idea how much money they're willing to spend, but we have some precedents there. The Clippers, it's going to age at some point. The Suns, who knows with those 3 guys. The Kings, like I'm not sure how, like where that's all go. Then the Lakers and the Warriors, right? And so like you have 4 or 5 teams there that 2 years from now, maybe that's the year it makes sense to go for it.
Okay. Next question here is, do you star hunt? Right. I think that you kind of brought this up. You do it if it's available. If not, then you should be happy to be patient. I personally, and I said I would answer these questions, I would lean toward being patient for many reasons that Bryce just brought up, right? Like, I think that they still have at least 1 more year to be able to build around this core and be able to make like rational, well thought out decisions at the end of the day. So if something crazy came available and I felt like I got a good price and a good deal, sure. But otherwise, I want to be patient. I want to build around these 6 guys. I'm going to bring a 7th guy in the draft this year because I have the 9th overall pick in all likelihood, or what's projected as the number 9th overall pick. I have like a 5% chance or whatever, 8% chance to keep my own pick. And then, I have this other Brooklyn pick, like could be if things really go right, like whatever, I'm for it. But I want to be patient. Like I want to see what Jalen, like truly, like Derek Reynolds says in in the comments on YouTube, like Sam really doesn't like Jalen Green. I've like come around like quite a bit, I think, to be honest.
No,
like
you have
like I'm at the point where like I'm like pretty interested in seeing where it goes with him.
Yeah.
I really, really am curious to know where this goes with Jalen Green. I just think we need to be realistic and also think about this from a holistic perspective of he had 4 months this year where he was pretty disappointing, and then 1 month in March against a bunch of bad teams where he was great. And now he's had like 5 games against good teams where he was not very good. So we're talking about a lot of different things here. You know what I mean?
Here's the Rockets have different paths as well. And I realize like people probably get annoyed. I reference the Pistons a lot for a team that sucks. Like Cade Cunningham's going to get the max this summer. And here's why. If for no other reason, they have no other choice. There is one path in Detroit right now, and it's with Cade Cunningham. And like, that's even before we get into what he's actually done on the court compared to Şengün and Green and whatever. Like to me, it doesn't even matter because that is the only path. To me, that's a compliment to the Rockets. It's a compliment to Şengün and Green and some of these other guys in the front office and the coaching staff in terms of you don't have to hitch your wagon to Jalen Green and just say, hey, hope it works out because we have no other option. So I think that's why this thing is so interesting is there are multiple paths they can take. And at some point you're going to have to choose one or start to eliminate these 2 over here or let's go. But like, if you can put that off for another year, I don't think that's the worst thing because the more data you have to make a decision, the better decision you're going to make.
Yes. You have time. You have time to be able to figure this out. Now, there are a couple just like small things I want to talk about with them. We've talked about the big picture things. The big picture questions are real. There's a idea with the Rockets. I think they are like 99% going to be utilizing an over the cap strategy this offseason as opposed to being under the cap and like using cap space. I will say that there are like semi-real avenues, I think, to which that they could try and be like an under the cap team. So currently, I believe that they have something like $124.5 million on the books for next season for the 9 guys that are like guaranteed money, plus their number 9 overall pick, plus 2 other like roster holds at the minimum. It's like right around 124.5, 125, like right in that ballpark. So projected it right around like $16 million in space. If they could get somebody to like take Steven Adams or something like that, and they wanted to go and like get Isaiah Hartenstein, right? Like they were just like, we want to be able to do some of the things that we do like in short rolls with Şengün, but then also have like this great rim protector on the interior. And we think there's like a substantial difference between Steven Adams and Isaiah Hartenstein. They have some flexibility to be able to do that. It would require not having Jayshawn Tate's $7 million team option, Jock Landale's $8 million non-guaranteed, Jeff Green's like $9.6 million team option, right? If they remove those things, they can do some things. Like Nick Claxton, by the way, like Dirty Dancer brings up Nick Claxton. That's like another real thing that they could do is way pay because they want Nick Claxton, right? I'm not suggesting that they should do this. I don't think they should do this. because they have those flexible contracts, it's at least a mechanism that they can negotiate with some defensive bigs, because if you remember last offseason, they clearly had real interest in Brook Lopez, and that fell through. There is at least flexibility because of these options. I would venture 99% likely, maybe 95% likely to just be an over-the-cap team and be able to handle things that way.
Do we think Steven Adams has a little bit left in the tank, right? Like, we feel like he's going to come back from this injury. Like, to me, whenever that contract is tradable, right? Especially if they do go star hunting, that's 12.6 million that you can add into it. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I thought we talked about a backup center for them throughout the entire year. And so when they made that move, to me, that was a preemptive, like, hey, yeah, we know he's not going to play this year, obviously, but next year when we come back, there's our, backup 5-man. I would kind of, again, this isn't fun. It's not fun for Rockets fans in terms of like an exciting offseason outside of adding a top 10 pick. I kind of like you can almost pencil 9 guys into the rotation, the draft pick as a 10th, and then you still have guys like Landell and Green and Jayshawn Tate that aren't even in that 10. So those are 11, 12, 13. And so when somebody goes down for a couple weeks with an ankle or whatever, you feel like you have quality players to fit in there. I like that. Like, that's what I like to see or would like to have to find out what all of these young guys actually are. So, I guess I'm leaning a little bit to like the true, like, let's just run this back again and get more data on it. Again, there's nothing fun about that. Maybe I'm missing something here, but that's kind of how I feel as we talk through it.
I think you can just run it back and see what it looks like at the end of the day. I think that's like a real avenue for them, and I would have no problem with them doing that. I would bet you that they look into what comes available, though.
Sure.
On the star market. I don't know that they'll actually do something, but we'll see what it looks like. And then obviously, like, the thing is that, like, the Jayshawn Tate deal, for instance, that's a deal that you have a lot of options on. Like, you could decide to, like, have him. You should almost certainly pick up his option. It's $7 million. Jayshawn Tate is a very valuable player. There is a team out there that would probably love to have him, that probably has like a trade exception, or maybe will generate a trade exception, that will be very happy to have him. And if you don't want him, like, you can, at the end of the day, just like kind of wipe your hands of it. Right. Yep, and you can get a, couple second-round picks, maybe 3 second-round picks or something, 2 second-round picks. Maybe, like, if the Celtics really wanted him, although he can't really shoot, so, like, I don't know if that totally fits their paradigm, but, like, maybe you could do something like that, right, with the Celtics. Maybe you could do Memphis. Maybe you could do, like, I'm just thinking of teams that, like, could use, like, a kind of do everything but shoot, 6'4", like, forward that's like a bowling ball and can pass and play make and defend and all that stuff. I would exercise his and just figure out a landing spot after. I think he's too good not to. Jock Landale, because you have the Steven Adams thing, I think that you can just, like, kind of play that in the way that you want to play it, and likely no longer have him after this season and just let him hit free agency. He's on a non-guarantee as opposed to having team options. I will note, I think Jock Landale has been quite good recently, and, like, not far off of an $8 million guy. And you have to remember, he got really hurt in the summer playing for the Australian national team. He's basically back to looking like what he did last year for Phoenix, when he was really valuable, like, for them in the playoffs, like, outplayed DeAndre Ayton for quite a bit of time in those playoff series. So I don't, like, 8 million is probably a bit aggressive for Jock Landale. I don't think it's insane to have that on your books for next year. And then Jeff Green, it's just like, do you want the leadership around? Yes or no? And even if you don't, like, you have his non-bird rights, or no, because you'd have a team option. So you'd be getting, you'd team option. So you'd be declining that. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with him.
Well, I was going to say, if you keep that's a little bit that's kind of a lot of money into the, like, fifth and sixth bigs if, we assume Steven Adams is the backup center behind Şengün, and then you have, that's almost $18 million between Landell and like, I feel like you probably make a decision between one of those two guys. But like you said, like if you feel like Green maybe isn't going to have it on the court, but you really value what he brings veteran leadership wise, but you have Adams in the locker room now. So like, it seems like maybe one of those two guys wouldn't be around. Again, not knowing exactly where all that money puts them in the cap and all of that and how it might hurt their flexibility. But my guess is you only keep one of those two guys.
I would venture so as well. Draft wise, like we can like mention prospects like Reed Shepherd makes sense for them. Like if you wanted like a defensive anchor, like Donovan Clingan makes sense for them. If you wanted somebody that's like a complement to Şengün, like I don't know how much guys like Matas Buzelis and Ron Holland and like some of these like bigger wing project guys like make sense for them. They have a lot of those guys already. Like some of them aren't even really projects anymore, but like Amen Thompson didn't really play point guard this year. Tari Eason is like one of these active, wings who doesn't really get guarded as a shooter. Cam Whitmore is a like scoring wing who has the size and everything. I probably don't love those guys for the Rockets, and I'd probably be looking at guys like Reed Shepherd, Clingan. I think there's a case that if Sarr would fall, although I don't think he will. Like that's an interesting one. Steph Castle. I love Steph Castle, so like, of course, I think that he's a guy that they should consider. I've had Steph Castle in my top 5 for quite a while. We'll talk about that momentarily, but like that's where.
What about Topic? Do you think Topic would make sense? And just in terms of like a Fred heir apparent, depending on how much you think Amin's going to actually play as a point guard?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Nikola Topic. Lock it in, Eddie. Let's go crazy. Okay. That's it for the Rockets.